I don't really know to start off or who wants to start off, but I kind of want to hand it over to you guys just to kind of talk through how that. I just love how the design community brought you guys together to inspire Nick, and I guess we guess start from the beginning, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about
All right.
design workflows, both footwear and automotive. But I think starting with this story would be great.
Sure. I guess I can kick it off. My son, I have two sons, and my oldest is 8, and he has a buddy, Nick, who he's a real shy kid, really good guy. And, you know, I was talking with his parents when we were at like a Halloween function thing, and they said, he loves drawing. He draws every day. And, he loves that you design for a living. He thinks that's the coolest thing ever. And, he told me that, every day he sits there and he draws a car every day. He makes a new car, and it just reminded me so much of myself as a kid. Like, I was a little shy, a little bashful, and, I would just be sitting there doodling too, cars and whatever. And, I just thought, I like seeing that he was already like kind of inspired a bit and into something. So yeah, I just did a quick napkin sketch of a car for him because I was inspired by him. I thought that was the coolest thing, that he'll sketch a new car every day. And I was like, oh, what a cool thing. I'm going to try that out too. I was like, Nick, I'm going to try that out. That's awesome, man. You're inspiring me. So I drew him up a car, and I just posted it on social media so his mom would see it. And then I'll let Mike take it from there. But yeah, it was cool.
Well, it just continues on with the inspiration, right? Because I think, for my part, I'd hate to say that I'm jaded or lazy, but there's lots of different ways to get inspired. And I think, having seen this little napkin sketch was an opportunity to go, okay, how fast could I get that into 3D? Could I just turn this into a 3D line and keep it sketchy, right, in the spirit of the original? Because I think Gravity Sketch is great for lots of things, and I think showing off, the sort of time to design or from thought to 3D is a big selling point, honestly. And so I'm kind of always trying to find ways to challenge myself. I think the new challenges you guys are putting up, to do stuff in an hour is great. I've got my next power tool lined up, and I'm going to carve 60 minutes to do something there. But man, the response, I think, is what carried it much further, right? So when I put the little sketchy version back up on Instagram and tagged Brian and just said, hey, hope you don't mind, I kind of did this thing, everything snowballed from there, right? And I think it's, to credit Brian's enthusiasm, his response, that just kept me driving and driving. And I was like, where can I take this next? What can I do? What can I add? And I'd sort of just can't turn it off sometimes. And so I think it's matured to a level way beyond that initial sketch. But I think it's sort of, I think the underlying point of this is it's gotten almost like reverb effects, throughout. So to send it back to Brian and say, what do you think about this? And then we got into kind of the dialogue about, I know he likes alphas, right? And it turns into this virtuous cycle of, I like Tipo 33 Stradales as well, and so let's turn this into something. And then, and I pushed it to the max, I think, with the tools that were available. And then when Sub D hit, I'm thinking to myself, well, how can I push it even further, right? And so just retopologize the whole dang thing in Sub D and fixed one of the bigger feasibility problems that was in the original sketch, which is all on me, about the way the door opens and the cutout for the roof would have hit the driver every time you get in and get out of the car. And so not only retopologizing in Sub D, but also fixing issues, right? Which is kind of, again, a storyline for me and my work life, right? Of being able to say, it's not just execute it and you're done with it. It's constantly malleable. You can always go back and change and modify and adjust. And it's a credit to the tool set, right? That it was easy and fun to do that. And another reverb happened really recently, right? Where my sister works for a law firm, Skadden Arps in New York City, and they had this first ever virtual interns for a law firm, and they're thinking, what are we going to do for law firm interns? And they put together this thing called SCAD class, and I got invited to talk about car design. And so I did a Miro board. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Miro, but it's this crazy web-based, web app-based presentation, brain dump, ideation. It's a huge whiteboard kind of a thing. And so I did the whole presentation in Miro. And then one of the big slices of it was, in fact, could I even share? Could I share? I'm so bad at Zoom. Share screen. Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna pull the Miro board up so you can see what I showed people. But the while this is booting in, or booting up, one of the craziest things that happened was one of the attendees said, I think it was 13 or 14. My 14-year-old son is crazy into 3D printing. He loved the whole thing about the Alfa Romeo. And, what can you tell me about car design? His father's a designer and not in the auto field, but knew about Art Center and totally connected, right, through that thing that you did, right, for that kid, Nick. And to me, the whole circle of life thing is crazy, right? Because I got into this whole dialogue because Miro allows you to invite people. So I invited the whole SCAD class to this board, and she posted up a question, and it was, what else can you tell me? And so it's just like crazy to me.
And during this time, Brian, what are you doing? Because you have yet to even experience Gravity Sketch, right? So
for me, I was like, you kidding me? Like a real car designer, like A, liking anything I did, and B, like and being inspired by it to make something. I went to Nick immediately, and like we showed him, and Nick was just floored when he saw the initial sketch that Michael had done. But for me with Gravity Sketch, I really was already curious about it, and I do a lot of sim racing, right? And my wife is always yelling because, if you have 3 screens in any space, clearly I'm under the stairs in the basement. So this is my man. This is all I have left. I have 3 kids and a dog. This is my only space I have in the house. But like 3 screens when you're doing sim racing is like a lot of room to take up. And she was not keen on that idea. So I did get a VR headset. And at the time, my computer wasn't powerful enough to do Gravity Sketch, but I got a new one after what Michael showed, what he could do that fast, that quickly. I was like, this is amazing, and I have to try this stuff out. And so I got a new computer, got Gravity Sketch going, and it was more than I could ever ask for intuitive. Like how quickly you could lay down a thought. It was really cool. Those first few days with it is just like mind blowing for sure.
And you're making pretty good cars with it too. I mean, now your Instagram is like 50% cars, 50% shoes, and like 2% family.
Yeah. It's like I'm 8 years old all over again. It's like same stuff I was doing back then. It's fun though, man. It's a lot of fun.
No, it's cool. It's been cool watching you adopt it to your workflow. I mean, you definitely just completely like liberated yourself in the tool. And Michael's been one of the diehard folks. Like Michael got on it when it was really scrappy still, and we were just finding where we fit in the design workflow. But yeah, it looks like you got this Miro board open, Michael. Happy to hand it over to you.
Oh no, I think it's crazy fun, and in fact, our virtual Ford interns are the ones that clued us into this particular tool, right? And it's just crazy fun because it's infinite, near infinite, I guess. But the way they used it was even crazier than this, right? Because they essentially had their entire summer project on here, and so everything they did, all the random GIFs and video clips that we found, all their progress, and it turned into almost a analogy to design school where they're kind of getting competitive between the two exterior designers because all their work was available at all times, right, to show. But just this fact that you can, zoom way down and build a sort of a narrative, right, which was where are we going? This is the answer that I gave to that one lady whose son was interested, right? She's like, well, where else could, where else do you guys look for designers? So yeah, I mean, I got into a crazy, like, how did we used to make cars, right? And what are some of the innovations that have been happening? And all this stuff really lends itself towards, and here's actually some of the intern work. So this is Gravity Sketch. We did these critiques, right, where I left little love notes for them on certain directions that they were using or certain directions they were heading in. We captured a screenshot, co-sketch selfie, we called it, of us playing around in the space. The way the interns use this like almost infinite regression towards a vanishing point of ideas on seats was super awesome. This kid did a lot in Blender, which was eye-opening for us. And we'll be looking for Blender to do things that, I don't know that Gravity Sketch, I think, I'm certainly finding Blender has value to me out of Gravity Sketch. And so I think that's kind of where that's headed.
Some extra refinement tools.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of how I told the story of the alpha, I mean, there it is, right? I turned it sideways so it would be aligned to the horizon, but, to show that you go from this quick little inspiration, right, to something, and then you add a little dose of things that we both liked, and then, man, it just kind of crazy snowballed from there. And you guys have seen most of this stuff. I think what's crazy is Miraboard is I can embed the Sketchfab link, and I can actually play Sketchfab live inside Miro on Zoom while we're all doing this.
How are you guys communicating this whole time? Were you guys chatting like through just Instagram only, or?
Yeah, I think it's all been Instagram.
Nice. I just love the power of the community because, yeah, you guys would have never found each other if it wasn't for the gram.
So you could, if I showed you the old one, this point right here stuck right over here. And so I crawled that whole thing back, and I redid so much, but it was very, I mean, this is kind of like I don't know, I hate to say perfectionist because I'm not ever going to get perfect, but, that desire to make it as authentic as possible was the drive. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool work. And we saw Matt Whitby and some of the other interns presented their work and showed the Miro sort of journey, and it was really impressive to see just all of how each one of them used Gravity Sketch in their own ways. That was really cool. They presented to us on that, and it just kind of, I think, was a really cool look into, Matt really was using it as an ideation tool for VR and interacting in VR, which is really cool. And then on the actual modeling side for one of the other interns was, it was pretty amazing. And so just like, I feel like the future of all of this stuff, in VR, of like sharing files and live viewing and screenshots, I think it's like definitely going to be the future, especially with all this remote working. And it's just amazing to see you guys and the interns like just taking it super far and doing this amazing work. So it's awesome.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully have some more news coming out of that, because the through line of Gravity Sketch used to prototype the interface and also the environments that ended up in Unreal is a storyline that we want to tell with Unreal as well. So they're keen on understanding, tracing it back from Unreal through to Gravity Sketch, and I think you guys obviously be interested in telling that story the other way. From Gravity Sketch. And so, yeah, it's all good. Matt, I don't really hold back when I talk about Matt, because I've been watching him for a while, not like creepy, but just, skill wise and portfolio wise. And I was maybe too bold. I don't know. We'll see. Because I basically told my management that he's the new prototypical designer, right? Somebody who is a design educated, skilled person who has another interest, and that was coding and Unreal and being able to work with blueprints, which something we just don't find with enough designers right now. And his ability to conceive of an idea, think in 3D, and then execute it into an experience, all combining Unreal and Gravity Sketch, to me was tremendous, and kind of what Ford is looking to do more of, to be honest.
Just touching on this, what I find really interesting about the two of you guys is you're both senior designers in your respected fields. We have a footwear designer at Reebok and a senior primary exterior designer at Ford. And you're both applying this tool to your workflow. And there's also some synergies there. And I'd love for us to talk a little bit about like how the two design disciplines kind of overlap, and potentially not just this tool, but how some similar tool sets kind of fit both of those workflows. Or do you guys draw inspiration from each other? Or, I mean, I'd love to learn a little bit more. Maybe we could start with you, Brian, on this side.
Yeah, sure. Well, the thing that I found interesting in how we could use the tool in footwear was just how, basically when we do our initial concepts, traditionally in footwear, we're in Illustrator for the majority of the process, right? We'll sketch in pencil and marker, and but when we present to the marketing side of the business, everything's usually done up nice and pretty, right? And anytime you're trying to communicate a 3D object to them, it's really hard to do in just a 2D drawing, no matter how many bells and whistles you put on the thing. So I found it really interesting to take it, and basically we imported some lasts and dropped them in, and how you can already have the 3D form you need, and you just sketch right on it. You know what I mean? You just go. Say you have, I mean, even if you don't even have a 2D sketch yet, you can just sketch right on the last, basically, which is something we do. We traditionally done in footwear for a while, is just taping up lasts, right? You do use like, Scotch tape or whatever, you tape it up and you just do it right on the last, then you cut it off and lay it flat, and then you got your pattern, right? So the speed at which you could, kind of figure out some things you're trying to do with the build of a shoe for the upper and for the midsole, outsole, it was really, to me, cool to see how fast you could put your idea down and then communicate that to the people that normally can't see in 3D, who normally don't, have that kind of like mindset, the way they look at it. So I thought, the stuff Michael was doing and just how amazing, the automotive, even like the stuff he's doing with the airplanes and everything else, just everything, concept artists. It's just so inspiring to see how fast people's workflows can go with this thing. And so I just kind of experimented, right? Because like in footwear, it's a little bit of new ground in footwear. So I was thinking I had a season where we had a new project, and we had an existing bladder, and so basically I had that imported, and then I basically designed a new outsole around the existing bladder that we had tooling already open for. And with the right lasts, all the things already in place, it was very easy to kind of like just come up with surfaces and all kinds of things that you normally have to explain to the factory in 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, right? It cut a lot of that meat out of the process for the factory. We give them a 3D file, they look at it and they can automatically, you know, see how each section is going to look when you slice up the shoe. And it really saved us a lot of time. So that to me also was a bit of an eye opener, which is good.
Was this your first kind of dip into 3D, or were you working 3D before?
I hadn't done 3D since like trying Alias back in college, like 20 years ago, right? I tried Alias back then. It was like, my mind just didn't operate in that way, I guess. So I haven't had, that was the first time I dipped back into anything 3D in that kind of way, software. And for me, like a novice, it instantly was, I could pick it up so quick. You know what I mean? The tools, you didn't even really need a manual. You know what I mean? You just kind of can figure it out. It's so well laid out, which I thought was great.
Don't beat yourself up too much, Brian. I think, you know, Alias and NURBS never made a ton of sense to me in terms of like thinking in slabs and trim lines and all that other, like slab, trim, fillet, ugh. I just, no, when I think of how far Gravity Sketch, even the Gravity Sketch NURBS tool was such an amazingly eye-opening thing, but then Sub D, it's like, I know where you're headed in terms of Sub D makes sense to my brain in ways that NURBS just doesn't seem to work. And I think the way I would say for inspiration for me, the stuff that Brian puts up, and I mean, first of all, I want almost all the shoes that Brian shows on his Instagram. I don't have enough money to buy all the shoes that I'd like, but the inspiration that I get from it is the materiality. Like when I look at footwear, the way these, and I say kids, you know, I'll include you in that, Brian, even though we're old stalwarts at this. You know, the way that the kids are playing with Gravity Sketch and showing the exploration and materiality is tremendous to me, right? And so the ability and the time cutting out aspect that Brian talked about, what we're most looking forward to obviously is taking people who are both traditionally embedded in 3D designers and the hope that they can think in 3D. And I think we're gonna have to train some people who we know are able to think readily in 3D, and then get those people together with clay modelers and sculptors and people who all they do is 3D, right? And all they live is 3D, and the magic is really going to happen then. You know, I stopped in a rare visit to Ford PDC, the design building recently, and I bumped into one of the master modelers who we shared Gravity Sketch with, and he's a guy who's, you know, he's a master craftsman, right? I mean, he literally taught me everything I know about surfacing. And it was just from sitting next to him, watching him do the things, right? We say, okay, but we need to move that line up a little bit. And then he would start to do his thing, and you realize, oh, that's how you get that line to move up. You know, have no concept of what you're asking for, right? And to watch it happen in front of you. And I would sit there and ask him, what does this tool do? And I'd pick up a tool and I'd clean the clay off of it and set it back in and he'd explain to me what it was for. I mean, that sort of transfer of knowledge, I don't think can happen anywhere but another 3D environment like Gravity Sketch and Co-Sketch, right, to be honest. And so that's what I'm super excited about, because when he played with Gravity Sketch, he started doing stuff with, I don't think at the time there was not even Sub D. So he was doing stuff with NURBS through his brain, was doing things differently than I had ever tried. And so again, it's all this, that's why I always end my emails. I'm always looking forward to what's next, because you guys keep adding stuff to the tool, and I'm gonna keep playing with it and seeing what can be done.
I want to talk really briefly about constraints. You guys both have constraints. I'm going to argue that automotive has tighter constraints, but can we kind of dive into the constraint side of things a little bit? And yeah, we can start with Brian, but I really want to see how these two types of constraints play nicely. I know you talked about importing lasts, you talked about importing existing bladders. Yeah, can you elaborate a little bit more on like how tight the constraints are and how, like, where is the space for innovation? Where is the space for creativity in your process?
Right. So I think on my side, basically, um, you know, with with lasts and everything else that we use to make footwear, it's pretty traditional shoemaking for the most part. There's a lot of innovations going on with materials and how we build the shoes for sure. So you're always trying to find a way to exploit a new manufacturing technique, right? I think about years ago when hot melt came out, the idea of like doing these shoes without having to hand stitch 45 panels on the shoe and have 75 people touch one shoe to make a shoe. um, Again, it can help the process, but also changes the aesthetic of the product, right? So you're constantly thinking of these things like how do we make things, it depends on the shoes really. I worked in performance running for a while, so a lot of the stuff we did there was all performance based, right? So thinking of how these things can layer on top of each other, how you're building these, I call it panini shoes, right? You kind of lay everything, cut the patterns, you lay them in, and then you press it, heat press stuff together. That gives you a look, but how does that play with, maybe the shoe's not just for some performance activity, like a streetwear kind of shoes. Like, how can you interplay these kind of new ways to make the shoes with like some kind of the real craft of it? Michael talked about like the model makers and the guys working in the clay. Like, there really is an art to these products, and you really want to kind of showcase how far you can push that. So a tool like Gravity Sketch in footwear, like, it allows you to play in 3D and play, traditionally, an upper and a midsole outsole, you'd be designing two separate packs, tech packs for those, and then you put them together eventually and hope everything lines up and works, right? But the way of Gravity Sketch, you can do it all in the beginning so that everything is harmonious. You can grow the midsole into the upper. It becomes a structural element. It becomes some supportive piece. And then we take it back and we bring it back and we say, how can we make this now? You know what I mean? That's kind of the fun challenge for the developers and us and the guys in the factory to figure this stuff out. And yeah, Gravity Sketch is a great tool for just going into 3D that much earlier in the process, so that the overall concept of the shoe, or whatever you're working on, it feels that much more holistic in the end, when you get the product on the shelf, which is really cool.
I'm going to spring right from Brian's words, harmonious and holistic, because that's honestly the same things we're looking for as well. The ability to trace yourself into VR was the thing that did long, and now I don't do anything different. If I'm going to design a car, it's got to fit me because I'm selfish. And so this idea of where people are and where people, power, and stuff, that's kind of a horrible abstraction for a car, but it usually has to fit people. It usually has to have some way to get the thing moving, and you want a place to put things. And so where those components are, both in proportion and location, determines kind of what the thing is. Truck's got a lot of room for stuff. It has a little bit more room for power usually, and the equation's changing so fast now with BEVs and autonomy and electric drivetrain and sort of all the different permutations of those. The ability to sit there and play with where people are and squishing the motive bits in different places on the vehicle well before you get into the powertrain meetings, right? I mean, that whole attack the traditional notions of what a car is kind of what it's the same thing, right? When you talk about being able to not do a panini shoe but to be able to do the holistic shoe, we're going to do the same thing with cars. It's just a different sort of equation, but ultimately the same goal.
That's cool. So I'm kind of like at the end of my list of targeted questions, but what I'd like to ask a little bit of, and then maybe Jaron, if you had any questions, you can jump in. And just for your reference, Michael, I introduced Jaron earlier. He's our head of community now, so he's been running all the socials and just making sure the community is engaging with each other. I felt that this is a great example of like real, true like community engagement where we were completely hands off with you guys' collaboration. It was kind of you guys just going for it and seeing what happens. And I'd love to see how this reproduces with concept artists and footwear designers, or you know, maybe interior designers and fashion designers, who knows, right? Like this kind of cross-pollination is something that I think is just going to drive like not only your industry, your respective industries forward, but the whole kind of creative ecosystem forward, because now you're looking at, again, we'll go back to this theme of holistically. You're looking at like the design process from a holistic perspective. Yep. And almost everything from a product perspective that we design includes the human, right? That's your car, that's your shoes, that's your backpack, that's the clothes that you're wearing, the cup that you're going to drink from, and so forth. So with that in mind, one of my final questions, and Jaren, of course, you can jump in after they answer this one, would be, if there was going to be a collaboration, a true collaboration between you two, what would the shoe be, or what would the car be, or would it be a car shoe, or what will we end up with?
Michael, you want to go first?
I'm trying. That's a good one. You're putting me on the spot, so that's usually bad. The true collaboration between Brian and I think
it might not be a car or a shoe.
Yeah, I mean,
might go off in some crazy world. I like your spaceship thing you were working on, Michael. That thing was insane. That was a bit of insanity.
Oh man, that well, I the last thing I did on that was kind of it's something I just put up on the Slack channel as a feature request, because Sketchfab has a 100 material limit. And when I brought the Mercedes race car and the spaceship together, I absolutely annihilated that material limit. And so it only allows you to shade it in one color, which is why the shots of that were in glossy red, lipstick red kind of. So I hit a limitation there. No, that stuff's just super fun. I mean, I wonder if I even have the sketch. That spaceship started from a side view that I did. You guys, do you know Alchemy? Have you guys ever played with Alchemy? It was a kind of a weird program that when you try to install it, sometimes the Windows like virus detector would say this program is a virus. But Alchemy was really wild because it would do, work with a stylus, and you draw stuff and you could say pressure sensitivity equals transparency, or the shape overlap, and you could just do the craziest serendipity type grayscale sketches. And so that spaceship started from just this wild abstract piece of art, and then I did a side view of a spaceship, and then that spaceship turned into a 3D model that's built at full scale in VR. I mean, to me, there's like again, the potential for taking something from just in that case, a brain fart, into something that, you found cool. That makes me happy, right? That you enjoyed that, because that's what that's about, right? Is it just making something that's not intended for anything but just joyous consumption. Because I haven't figured out how to make a video game around it yet, but I'm working on that. Man, I don't know. I think Brian and I would have to have a separate offline conversation, not to get too corporate buzzwordy, but I'd like to take that offline, and Brian and I will get back to you on what a true collaborative. You do have a landing pad account, right, Brian?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
oh yeah, I do.
Because we could get together in CoSketch and see what happens.
I'd like that.
That would be brilliant.
Yeah, I'm down.